Hey, it's Alan, and I just wanted to let you know that you can now listen to the ongoing history of new music early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. I guess I'd better do this. This program begins with an advisory. No, not that kind. There's nothing dirty or obscene or controversially political coming up. It's just that what you're about to hear is different, very different. And I mean really different. There are thousands of music genres out there, but on this program, we're going to look at something special. It's a genre known as outsider music. You know the kid at school who seemed to live a little beyond the status quo? He or she wasn't quite, normal. And I don't mean that in any judgmental or pejorative way. They just marched to their own beat. Whatever was going on inside their head may have just been a little hard for you to grasp. I know I went to school with a couple of these people. Some of them may have felt a need to express themselves artistically. And the art that came out of these folks didn't exactly fit anywhere. If it was music, it wasn't the sort of music that other people were making. Outsider musicians are often self-taught. They're perhaps a little naive when it comes to the conventions of music and how it's performed. Traditions, music theory, and experience mean nothing to them. They don't care about what other people think about what they're doing because they believe in themselves so much that, put it this way, for them, it's all about the sheer joy of music. No two outsider musicians sound alike. Some may have intellectual disabilities or suffer from some kind of mental illness, like schizophrenia, for example. While others are just a little left of center when it comes to their outlook on reality, something that comes out through their music. But all outsider musicians do have something in common. There is often a childlike quality to what they create, and they are motivated, like I said, by the sheer joy of expressing themselves through music, and they don't give a damn about what other people may think. If we look at them through that particular lens, their spirit is to be admired, even if the music is a little challenging. Now that you've been warned and I've explained myself, let's take another dive into the fascinating world of outsider music. Prepare yourself.
This is the Ongoing History of New Music podcast with Alan Cross.
Hello again, I'm Alan Cross, and before we begin, there is nothing wrong with your radio or playback equipment, nor is there any quality control problem here at the studio with our equipment. And we are, let me assure you, in complete control of our faculties. This is about an area of the music universe that is unlike anything else, outsider music. We shall not judge, and we certainly will not mock. Instead, let us marvel at the joy these people experience at being able to express themselves in such unvarnished, unfiltered, and occasionally primitive ways. You'll see what I mean in a moment, but first, a little more background on this. The progenitor of outsider music is outsider art, a concept that first arose in France in the 1920s, when it was simply known as art brut. Back then, it specifically referred to art that was beyond merely avant-garde. It was created by people who were either children or those who were in some way mentally ill. The concept of outsider music was always in the background, but began to take hold in the 1950s when referring to certain fringes of the jazz world. From there, the term moved to the world of rock and pop. Our modern view of outsider music was shaped by Erwin Chisholm, a music journalist and a DJ at WFMU, an independent community radio station in East Orange, New Jersey. Chisholm loved to feature the music of these artists and even issued a couple of compilation CDs entitled Songs in the Key of X. If you go back into the Ongoing History archives, you'll find a couple of previous shows on outsider music with some of the material drawn from those two CDs. On those programs, I covered Wesley Willis, the Shags, the legendary Stardust Cowboy, Jandik, Captain Beefheart, Daniel Johnson, Florence Foster Jenkins, and even Charles Manson. I could have also included Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, which makes total sense, but only if you know his entire life story. And if you listen to this program and decide you're intrigued, I really do invite you to go back and check out those previous episodes. This time, it's a fresh list of those who have been called unintentional renegades, people who look at music incorrectly, but should be admired for their chutzpah and their unbridled authenticity. And we're going to begin with the Space Lady. Her name is Susan Dietrich. She is from Pueblo, Colorado. And for years, she was a street musician, often spotted in places like Boston or San Francisco. She wasn't hard to spot. She wore a silver plastic helmet adorned with white wings and a flashing light on top. And she played the accordion. She got the name Space Lady after some newspaper coverage. In the 80s, she moved from the accordion to a battery-powered synthesizer. And in 1987, she started releasing music. Her first album, The Cosmic Man by Amazing Things, is probably her best-known piece of work, largely because it has ended up on lists ranking the strangest records ever made. But if you want the full effect, it's best to get her 2013 compilation, The Space Lady's Greatest Hits. Here's what I'm talking about.
And they all started grooving, yeah, 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 yeah. The man in the left really blew his stack and it turned into a bomb blitz. And the girl in the corner said, boy, what a warning, it'll turn into a bomb blitz, bomb blitz, bomb blitz, bomb blitz, bomb blitz, 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 blitz.
Susan Dietrich, otherwise known as the Space Lady, and one of her many classic rock covers. Last I heard, she was still in Colorado and was being managed by her grandson. Next on our list of outsider music stars is Hassel Atkins. He was from very poor rural West Virginia and dabbled in rock, country, blues, and rockabilly, most often performing as a one-man band. The man played guitar and drums at the same time. If you're into psychobilly, the crazier and more amped-up version of rockabilly, Hassel Atkins was a pioneer. Everything about his music was different. He liked to sing about sex, but he also had songs about chickens and various types of poultry. There was a lot of that. He also declared that his hero was Colonel Sanders of KFC. Other songs were about eating peanut butter on the moon, aliens, hot dogs, and the occasional tune about decapitation. Each song was partnered with a dance of the same name. There were a lot of chicken dances, obviously, including chicken hop, chicken flop, and chicken wobble. And he pioneered a dance called the slop, which was designed specifically for drunks. You staggered one way, then you staggered the next, then you fell down. After years of being an unknown, he ended up with an indie record deal that turned him into a cult star. Miles Copeland, the head of IRS Records, brother of Stuart Copeland of the Police, wanted to do an album with him, but it never worked out. But he did have this one particular indie deal. Word started to spread on this guy who drank 8 liters of coffee a day and toured with go-go dancers who were, of course, imitating chickens. We learned about the time he and a bunch of friends drove off a 70-foot cliff for fun. He was jailed for statutory rape, and he may have had manic depression and a few other mental illnesses. In the 2000s, he was run over by a teenager driving a quad bike in his front yard. 11 days after that, he died, just short of his 68th birthday. That was, like I said, 2005. In 2018, he was inducted into the West Virginia Hall of Fame. So, let's hear from Hassel. This is, we got to do a chicken song, right? And this is the Chicken Walk.
Wiggle yourself from head to toe. Do your stuff wherever you go. Do your stuff up on the floor. Do your stuff wherever you go. Come on, baby, do a chicken walk.
Another outsider music star, the late Hassel Atkins with the Chicken Walk. If you want to know more, there's a documentary called The Wild World of Hassel Atkins that is rather interesting. Next up is something else from East Appalachia. The Amazing Dolores, hometown Mudlick, West Virginia. Yes, Mudlick. She was a former model and the owner of a beauty and charm school. When she was 40, she decided to pivot into a music career. Her first performance was a rendition of House of the Rising Sun as she jumped up and down on a table. The Amazing Dolores became something of a sensation in and around Charleston with her penchant for gold leopard print clothing, a giant beehive hairdo, and weird stream of consciousness ramblings of an apocalyptic religious nature. She had a fan in Stan Lynch, the drummer for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and he helped her record an album in 1994 called Stop Messin' With My Mind. Part of the album featured a weird bunch of messages she left on an answering machine. By this time, she was such a local treasure that the city declared the day of its release Amazing Dolores Day. So let's sample that. This is called Rats in My Trailer.
I'm sorry everything's turned off, but I'm fixing to move. And trust, I must warn you, there's a rat in my ceiling and a low-down rat in my bed too.
The Amazing Dolores with Rats in My Trailer from her one and only album Stop Messin' With My Mind from 1994. As far as I know, she's still around, although she doesn't seem to perform much anymore. Next on our list is Larry Fisher, otherwise known as Wild Man Fischer. He was from Los Angeles and worked as a street musician, often performing a cappella songs on the Sunset Strip. Because he suffered from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, much of his adult life was spent either homeless or institutionalized. He was often very medicated, but he did have fans, including Frank Zappa, Alice Cooper, and later Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo. In 1968, Zappa helped him record a double album entitled An Evening with Wild Man Fischer, which Rolling Stone rather liked. They said the album captured the total being of one strange member of the human community. He landed opening gigs with everyone from The Byrds to Iron Butterfly to Bo Diddley. And he was this pseudo-protege of Zappa until the day he threw a bottle at his baby daughter. He was cut off. Fisher kept popping up in odd places. He's mentioned in the book Vineland, a 1990 novel by Thomas Pynchon. He was the subject of a comic book. There were late-night network TV appearances, and there was a documentary about the guy. Things really began to go south for Fisher in 2003 when he had a full-blown episode of paranoia that lasted 6 months, something that saw him back on the streets. It wasn't until his aunt rescued him and got him back on his meds that he turned out to be, a little more functional. But the medications somehow snuffed out his musical creativity, and he never performed again. He died in June of 2011 of heart failure. So, what was Wild Man Fischer's music like? This is from that 1969 double album, An Evening of Wild Man Fischer, which includes song titles like I'm Working for the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and Think of Me When Your Clothes Are Off, and this one, Merry-Go-Round.
Come on, let's merry-go, merry-go, merry-go-round. Ooh, 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 merry-go, merry-go, merry-go-round. Ooh, 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 merry-go, merry-go.
Wild Man Fischer, the former homeless LA street musician, whom a lot of people consider to be the godfather of outsider music. Someone recommended I check out Jan Terry, who IMDb calls an endearingly bad amateur Italian-American singer-songwriter. Topping out at about 5 feet, Jan was originally from Chicago, where she played in a jug band with her mom and dad. All three would perform Elvis covers in blackface. Jan started a legitimate career in the music business, earning a certificate in sound engineering and also serving as the occasional backup singer. But that didn't work out after a while, so she got a job as a limo driver. But she never gave up on making music. She started recording songs and making music videos, which she put on VHS tapes that were handed out to her limo passengers. Through a roundabout way, she connected with Marilyn Manson, who loved her so much that he hired her to sing at his birthday party. Jan then opened a series of shows for Manson. Now that we're in the internet age, everyone can enjoy Jan's music. There are songs like Journey to Mars, Rock and Roll Santa, and this hit, Get Down Goblin.
Yeah, we smell like burning leaves. It's fear of excitement tonight. Get down, goblin. Get down, goblin. Get down, goblin. Get down.
Jan Terry, an outsider music and hero to many. In a moment, more unabashed joy of making music from B.J. Snowden, a Russian TV star, and the very wonderful Jimmy Mitchell. This is an episode out on the fringes of the music universe. We call this stuff outsider music. These creators have something inside them that drives them to make pure, unadulterated songs without any cares or worries about what anyone may think. Once again, no one is making fun of these people. We're celebrating that whatever it is inside them. It's like saying, dance like no one is watching. It's the human spirit in action. Next on our list is Jimmy Mitchell. We don't know too much about him other than Jimmy was a blind, mentally challenged singer from Dallas. In the 1990s, he won a karaoke contest, which resulted in the recording of an album in Denton, Texas. This 11-track record featured some covers of some old standards, a few religious tunes, and this song. It's called I'm From Big D. Listen to the utter joy with which this song is performed.
I mean Big D, little I-double-L-A, Big D, little I-double-L-A, Big D, little I-double-L-A-S. And that spells Dallas, where every home's a palace.
Jimmy Mitchell and I'm From Big D. If you're a student of outsider music, you might hear some of the similarities between his style and that of Wesley Willis, a performer covered on a previous episode on this subject. Let's move to B.J. Snowden. She's a black woman originally from Massachusetts, but has a real thing for Canada. She is a giant of the outside music world. The BBC did a story on her. She's been on MTV a couple of times. There was a Jimmy Kimmel appearance. And one of her biggest fans is Fred Schneider of the B-52s. He produced a couple of Christmas songs for her. She's no slouch. BJ is a graduate from the Berklee College of Music. She was a music teacher for a while, and she's been compared to people like Yoko Ono, who may be the grande dame of all female outsider musicians. Her greatest hits, if you want to call it that, all involve songs about Canada. She's written many songs about the country and all the provinces. Why? Because it was her grandmother's country, and she loves visiting. She wasn't crazy about being labeled an outsider musician, but she's mellowed about that. Check out the wonderful innocence and sincerity of her stuff. Here's a song about Newfoundland from an album released in 2001.
It included people of many nations. On Newfie, that pretty rocky ledge from a distance.
B.J. Snowden, the American outsider musician with a real thing for writing songs about Canada. Now we're off to Russia, or more correctly, the USSR, because this next clip is from 1976. The singer is Edward Hill. That's his anglicized name. He was a really big deal at one point with all kinds of official government rewards bestowed upon him. He was such a big deal that he was once known as the symbol of Leningrad. He was a music teacher and toured over 80 countries. In other words, we're obviously talking about a serious musician and singer. However, Hill sang this song on Soviet TV in 1976. Around 2010, this performance became a meme and swept the internet. The song is called I Am Very Glad As I Am Finally Returning Home. The original has lyrics, but for this TV appearance, he arranged things differently. For reasons that you will understand, this became known as the Trololo song. It became such a meme. It was often used as a rickroll for a time because of the video that accompanied the song, that afterwards Hill started calling himself Mr. Trololo until he died of a stroke in 2012. Is Edward Hill an outsider musician? I don't know, but you got to have something special if you're going to do something like this on national TV. But again, listen to this and you just can't help but feel good, right? Edward Hill, the Russian baritone, with I Am Very Glad As I Am Finally Returning Home, otherwise known as the Trololo song. We're still not done. I have a few more outsider tracks that are guaranteed to, well, I'm not really sure what, but it is material unlike anything else you'll hear this week. Or ever. Trust me. We have time for a few more outsider music tracks, and next up is a group called Yo-Ho-Wah 13, which is led by Father Yod, whose real name was James Edward Baker. Father Yod is the head of a religious commune. He was some kind of spiritual leader of the Source family. Their headquarters was in Father Yod's mansion in the Hollywood Hills. Yohowa 13 was conceived in 1970 as a trippy psych group. Their recordings were wild improvisations. There were no rehearsals, no planning. Copies were pressed in batches of no more than 1,000 and sold through the mail and at a store known as the Hermit Hut, which was next door to Father Yod's vegetarian restaurant called The Source on Sunset Boulevard. The group consisted of Jin Aquarian on guitar, drummer Octavius Aquarian, and Sunflower Aquarian on bass. Other participants included Lovely, Zoroaster, Hom, Rhythm, Pythias, Aquariana, Ahom, and Electron, and all of them have the last name Aquarian. We know of 9 Yohowa albums since 1970, although there's probably been a ton of unreleased music. The original albums, all released between 1973 and 1975, are highly prized collectibles in the eyes of certain music fans. Father Yod stopped participating in 1975 after he died in a bizarre hang gliding accident in Hawaii. Without any experience or training, he just leapt off a 1,300-foot cliff on the eastern shore of Oahu. He crashed on the beach and died 9 hours later at the age of 53. But the group carried on in various incarnations. Let's sample some of what the original Yohowa 13 sounded like. This is from 1974 and is called Because.
Because you come to me with nothing but love and hold my hand.
Yohowa 13 with Father Yod and Because from 1974. If we're to believe what we're told, that was the result of some improvisations. Again, no rehearsals, no planning. And this cult has a cult following. For those who really want to go deep into this, look for an 11-CD box set that was issued in Japan in 2005. One of the best places to find outsider music used to be on community access cable channels. This is how I discovered a Winnipeg band called Ruggedy Ann's back in 1985. There were 4 women who were into the noisiest sort of punk that I'd heard up until that point. Turn on the TV on another community cable channel, and you might find Sunseed. They were a Christian ska band.
Jesus is a friend of mine. Jesus is my friend. Jesus is a friend of mine. I have a friend in Jesus. Jesus is a friend of mine. Jesus is my friend. Jesus is a friend of mine.
Still with Christian music, this is a group called Nobody.
All the trees that once stood tall, they are gone now. We've watched them all fall. Don't you
These are the Shags of Soul. And then we have this from Texas. The group is called Complete, and this is their, I guess, hit entitled Dreaming. I apologize for the dodgy audio, but this was salvaged from an old VHS tape.
I was in a strange place where I didn't want to be born. This place in which I had to get away from.
Again, the band is Complete, and I'll just leave it at that. And finally, I'm going to leave you with the Nihilist Spasm Band. They were formed in London, Ontario in 1965, and are still going. In the world of outsider music, a Spasm Band is a group that uses mostly homemade instruments. There's plenty of improvisation. Nothing needs to be coordinated or in tune. The Nihilist Spasm Band was a fixture in London for years at a couple of bars and an art gallery. Instrumentation has consisted of the usual guitar, bass, and drums, along with kazoo, thumb piano, cooking pot, and water pipe. They've toured England, France, Switzerland, Germany, the Czech Republic, and Japan. They have fans in Sonic Youth. In fact, they opened for Sonic Youth at least once, as well as Negativland, other noise groups, and believe it or not, REM. Author Malcolm Gladwell was taught in school by vocalist Bill Exley. There have been around 20 albums. Some of the original members have died, but have been replaced. There's a documentary on the group, and they're part of the London Music Hall of Fame. Here's a sample of their work: the Nihilist Spasm Band and When in London, Sleep at the York Hotel. Okay, so what do you think? Has this episode on Outsider Music taken you places you've never been before? That was the hope. Again, the whole idea was not to mock or judge. Outsider musicians should be admired for their insatiable need to express themselves through music, no matter how it may sound or appear to others. Like I said at the beginning, there were a few past shows on this topic if you want to go even deeper. There were stars in this universe like Jandek and Wesley Willis and the Shags that also deserve attention, and maybe even your admiration. Those ongoing history podcasts are free for the taking wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more of this sort of thing, drop me a line through alan@alancross.ca and I'll start preparing another episode just like this one. And if you know of any outsider musicians, let me know about them too. Meanwhile, go get some older podcasts or some of the hundreds of other programs that are available. If you're in a podcast mood, there's my other program, Uncharted: Crime and Mayhem in the Music Industry. It's music meets true crime, and there are dozens of programs there too. You're also invited to my website, ajournalofmusicalthings.com. It's updated with music news, recommendations, and opinion. We can connect through most of the social media networks, and like I said, contact me anytime through alan@alancross.ca. Technical production for all this is by Rob Johnston. We'll talk to you next time. I'm Alan Cross.